I'm Scott Flowers with Cloud Ninjas. Today we're here to talk about Dell PowerEdge M915 blade server memory upgrade kits and how to properly load and configure the system. Let's get started. Well, hey, thanks for stopping by to learn a little bit more about the Dell PowerEdge M915 server. If you find anything in today's video useful, do us a favor and click that like and smash that subscribe. Well, hey, let's get rolling. First things first, let's go over the CPUs. There are 4 CPUs inside. It uses an AMD Opteron 6100, 6200, or 6300 series processor, which is a G34 socket. As far as the RAM is concerned, it accepts DDR3 memory. There are 32 DIMM slots inside. There's a number of different speeds you can use. You can go as low as 1066, 1333, or all the way up to 1600. I will note that 1600 will clock back down to 1333, so there's really no advantages to the 1600 unless you just have them laying around. And they will work, yes, but they will clock down, so I just wanted to note that in advance. As far as the sizes are concerned, you can go as low as 1 gig, 2 gig, 4 gig, 8 gig, 16 gig, or yes, all the way up to 32 gig. I understand the spec sheet doesn't say that 32 gigs are accepted. However, they do work, which means the max that you can get for this machine is 1 terabyte using 32 by 32 gigabyte. And we should note the only type of RAM that you can use for this machine is ECC Registered, which is also known as an RDIMM. And the speed for the max will be 1333. So the overall max will be 1 terabyte using 32 gigs at 1333 megahertz. So anyhow, now that we know a little bit more about the machine, let's pop it open. I want to show you the channels, how to properly load, how to properly configure. But before we do, I always recommend grabbing your ESD gear and putting it on before you're inside any machine, because you never want to accidentally damage it. I'm going to grab mine. I'll be right back. All right, now that we have our ESD gear on, we're safe to open the machine. First things first, pop the latch open and lift the top up. Pretty easy, like any machine you've been in before. As we discussed, there are 4 CPUs and 32 DIMM slots, and you can see it. It's quite a lot for a blade server, which is pretty awesome. I mean, having 32 DIMM slots and 4 CPUs and a blade makes it a pretty powerful blade, to say the least. When you get 16 DIMM slots in a blade, that's pretty awesome. But really, it's wider than most blades are pretty much like this normally, so it makes sense how they got to the 32. But anyhow, so this is CPU 1. CPU 1 controls the 8 DIMM slots over here. This is CPU 2 that controls the 8 DIMM slots over here. This is CPU 3, it controls the 8 DIMM slots over here, and this is CPU 4 that controls the 8 DIMM slots over here, okay? And you will notice that all of the memory over here is labeled A, which to help you know that's associated with CPU 1. All the memory over here is labeled B for CPU 2, C for the CPU 3, and D for CPU 4. That's one that helps you to know. And then also, if you lift the heat sinks up, it technically says it under it on the motherboard. It's labeled which is which to just make it a little bit easier for you. So anyhow, so for CPU 1, this first slot is A1. And then it skips to the next channel, which is A2, then it skips to the next channel, which is A3, and then the next channel, which is A4. So basically the white tabs are the start of each channel. And to break that down a little bit better, each CPU controls 8 DIMM slots, and within the 8 DIMM slots there are 4 memory channels, and each memory channel has 2 DIMMs per channel. And this is actually really important because for DDR3, for ECC Register, you run into the rank rule, which this machine doesn't, but when you have 3 DIMMs per channel, which is very common for a lot of machines around this generation, then you run into the rank rule, and you can only put 2 DIMMs per channel for quad rank, which is an issue for 32 gig DDR3 because all 32 gig DDR3 ECC Register is quad rank. So luckily with this machine, you don't run into that issue at all, and there's only 2 DIMMs per channel. But it's important because not everybody's going to want to max this machine out and put in 32 gigabytes. So let's just say you were putting in 16 modules as opposed to putting in 32 modules. You want to make sure that you always put them in the start of the channel, which is the white tab. And people ask, why do I want to skip and put them into each channel? Well, it's really simple. It's all about having a nice balance across your channels. If you have one channel that's doing all the work and the other channel's not doing any work, or doing anything at all, then you're overloading one, and you really just want to have a nice, smooth, even distribution across all your channels just to maximize your performance, okay? So now that you know a little bit more about the channels, let's go ahead and physically start installing them. One of the things that I do want to note, On the back here you'll see there's a notch, and this notch is known as the key. This key is very important because the key is not perfectly centered. So when you go to install the modules, you have to make sure that you have the key lined up properly, because inside the DIMM slot there is a notch that is sticking up, and that plastic notch will prevent you from inserting it the wrong way, and it could damage the DIMM itself, or it could damage the DIMM slot if you put it in the wrong way, which would mean you might have to get a new motherboard. So none of that is something that you want to run into. So we always just stress the fact that you just need to be really careful on lining it up. And I get it, it's very easy. Lining up modules is very easy, but it is also one of the most common user errors out there. So it's something that we always stress the fact. So for over here, we're going to line it up this way. And I will note that it does flip-flop from CPU 1 to CPU 2 as far as which way you line up, and from CPU 3 to CPU 4, the DIMM slots flop as far as where the notch is at, or and where you need to put the key. So all very simple stuff. One other thing, a tip that I always advise people, I've already technically done it, but you want to make sure all your tabs are popped open. It just makes it easier so you're not fumbling around or you have a tab preventing you from inserting the module. So anyhow, we're going to go ahead and max this out right now, and we're going to put in 32 gigs and get this bad boy all the way up to 1 terabyte, okay? And actually, one of the things, I already installed the first one, but one of the things I want to note, you'll see the module is physically installed. It looks like it's installed, but it's really not fully seated. So this machine isn't very loud, but normally you'll hear 2 clicks. Okay, and those 2 clicks are letting you know that the tabs have physically pulled down the little notches and made sure that the leads are fully inserted. So it's a very simple error that happens all too often, where someone will think that they have a failed module, and really they don't have a failed module. The issue here is that they haven't fully inserted it, and it's, like I said, it's a really common user error. I don't care if you've been a technician for 20 years or this is your first day on the job at the data center. It's a very easy mistake. I do it more often than I'd like to admit, but you know, it happens to us all. So it's one of the things that I always just tell people to be really safe on. And then one way you can also double check it is at the very end, once you've installed them, the modules, look at the tabs, and if one of the tabs is still kind of jetted out a little bit, sticking out a little bit further than the rest of the tabs, then what's happened is that tab did not get fully closed, which means the module is not fully seated. So that's one of the things that you can do, is just look at the tabs in the back. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the fast forward here in a second. I do want to note, we had talked about it, the module is going to flip which way it's facing, and the number 1 module goes on the outside over here. But I'm going to fast forward so not to waste anyone's time, and we're going to go ahead and get the rest of these installed. Alright, so one of the things that you will notice that I have done is I've worked my way back to the middle here, and people will ask, why did you do that? And honestly, it's really simple. When you are installing the modules, sometimes when you get to this last module, say like right here, and you got the heat sink and you got all these modules pressed up, it's kind of a small area to work. So I personally like to kind of work my way back to the middle to make it easier to install the final DIMM. So anyhow, now that we have physically installed everything, I'm going to, like I said, check all the tabs and make sure nothing is sticking out. It takes an extra 2 seconds and nothing's sticking out, so we're good to go. So literally in a matter of a few minutes, doesn't that look beautiful? I mean, that just looks so great. It's so much better with all the modules in there. So literally in a matter of a few minutes, you are able to max this out, put in 1 terabyte of RAM, and really, if you're running this for your, let's say this is in your data center and this is running your company for, you know, whether it's your emails or doing virtualization, whatever application that you're using, one of the things that I always say, if you're not ready to make the jump to a newer system, it's really expensive to go buy a new server from Dell, the best band-aid is RAM. If you're looking to increase the performance out of your machine, upgrade the RAM. That's going to take you a long way, and it's going to help out quite a bit. So anyhow, if you made it this far, do us a favor, click that like and smash that subscribe. And if you need any upgrades for your Dell PowerEdge M915, email us at sales@cloudninjas.com. That's sales@cloudninjas.com, and we would love to help you out. Thanks for stopping by. Have a great day.